Hello and welcome back to another video on this channel. Today we're going to be discussing yet another topic or a discussion on the works of Dostoyevsky, since it is Saturday. For those who have seen the video that I uploaded in the morning, which was my photos around Hong Kong, you might have been worried that I was not going to post a Dostoyevsky video, but do not be worried because that is exactly what I'm doing. I haven't forgotten to do that. It's just that I had that video in mind, so I just decided to upload it while I could. And just to provide a bit of commentary for that video, I would like to thank you guys so much for being part of the last few months of my life. It's been a great joy to making these videos for you. It's been a great joy to be able to go around Hong Kong making verse of the days, taking pictures of these absolutely phenomenal places and making me visit new places in Hong Kong that I would have never gone and visited otherwise. So it's been an absolute pleasure to make these videos for you. And before I get into this video, I'd like to remind you that if you're new to this channel, make sure to like and subscribe. We're 2 subscribers away from hitting 200 subscribers, so I'm really pumped for that. Got really good things in mind prepared for you. So if you're interested in anything about Dostoyevsky, apologetics, philosophy, Nietzsche, anything like that, make sure you go hit that button, subscribe, and like the video. You can also join the Discord server so you can give me feedback about how I can improve this channel to suit your liking, and also there you can request any videos or any people or philosophers that you want me to discuss. Without further ado, let's get right into the video. Today, as you can see in the title or the thumbnail, today's topic is going to be quite controversial. This is the idea that Christ is more important than the truth, or actually better phrase is that the truth without Christ is completely pointless, and that if Christ was apart from the truth, it might be actually reasonable to follow Christ rather than the truth. And if you're interested in that or want to understand more about this seemingly crazy, paradoxical, and dreadful concept, feel free or make sure to watch to the end of the video and you will find out why I agree with Dostoyevsky when he says that if it was true that Christ was apart from the truth, then I would prefer to remain with Christ rather than the truth. So let us go back to the raw text to what Dostoyevsky actually wrote to Natalia, because I think this is one of perhaps his most controversial ideas in his writings. And this is basically the thing which says, there is nothing more beautiful, more profound, more attractive, more wise, more courageous, and more perfect than Christ. If someone proved to me that Christ were outside the truth, and it really were that the truth lay outside of Christ, I would prefer to remain with Christ rather than the truth. And before you atheists who are watching this suddenly shout at me and you sacrifice your intellect, you Christians are completely depraved now, you guys have completely destroyed the intellect, let me discuss and demonstrate why this is actually quite a reasonable thing to hold, and that Dostoyevsky, I think, is quite right when he says this. And this idea or this concept, of course, is a very deep topic, and I wouldn't discuss it all in this video because I think it ties into a lot of other Dostoyevsky's works. But essentially what I want to do is give an overview of this concept, and I think it will really help you when you're reading Dostoyevsky to understand where he's coming from. So let me discuss Dostoyevsky's reasoning, and I'll make it in a syllogistic form or a more syllogistic form for you to understand. So he says either God exists or God does not exist, or either Christ is true or Christ is not true. And that's quite reasonable because they have to either one be true or not. If Christ is true, then let's follow the truth and let's follow Christ, and that's all good. Like, that makes sense to most people. Everyone would accept that. However, the question is that if Christ is not true, what then? Because in Dostoyevsky's view, Christ and the truth loses its meaning. The world loses its meaning if Christ is not true. If God does not exist, in Dostoyevsky's world, nihilism is the only result. And if you accept nihilism, then truth and itself becomes meaningless itself as well. So if that's the case, if Christ is not true, then Dostoyevsky argues that, well, there is no reason to follow the truth anymore. So why not just follow Christ, which provides you with meaning of life and prevents things like the problem of Kirillov, which is basically the idea of what is so wrong about extreme actions like suicide and other of these really dark and difficult moments. What makes these things wrong? And that, Dostoyevsky says, is Christ. Christ is the locus of beauty. Christ is the locus of hope, of meaning and purpose. And that locus of greatness and goodness and profundity is so great that it outweighs or overcomes all other things that might be compared to it. including the fact that even if Christ was not true, the story of Christ itself would, or the concept of accepting God itself, would be so profound and sufficient to justify believing in Christ over the truth. And to develop this further, or to understand it further, I think that there's two main concepts. We need to understand the difference between the Chelyavika Bog and the Boga Chelyavik, which is basically the difference between the man-God and the God-man. The man-God is what happens when man turns away from God and makes himself God. The God-man is the result of turning to Christ. And I'll discuss this further in a different video on the Antichrist, the man-God, against the God-man. However, I'd like to give you a brief understanding of this idea because I think it's very helpful here. What Dostoyevsky is saying, like Nietzsche, because as I've said before, Nietzsche and Dostoyevsky are very similar writers. What we do see is that Dostoyevsky is saying that, well, if God doesn't exist, then where does man ought to go except for making himself the man-God? But being the man-God is self-destructive, and why is that the case? Is because humans without God becomes terribly free. They become the ultimate arbitrators of what is right and wrong. If man is the sole ruler of his own universe, man becomes God. Man elevates himself to the greatest thing in the universe. And when that happens, self-destruction and also destruction of those around us surely follows, because then you have not only complete subjectivity, everyone, it's almost like a man for themselves, and everyone kind of fights against each other for their own interests. What we also see is that there is no reason to go even further. There's nothing which motivates us to move beyond what our current state is. And what happens is that what we see is wrong in our lives, and what is wrong in our lives, out of ourselves, we justify it as the man-God. And we justify ourselves and lead to self-destruction. So what we see here, I think, and I wouldn't make this video too long, it might be one of the shorter videos, but I think it is one of the more profound videos, is the idea that Christ is more important than the truth, in the sense that if Christ does not exist, the truth also leads, or the truth itself loses its importance. And I want to make it very clear that I am not claiming that Christ is not the truth. That's the last thing that I want you to take away from this video. I believe that Christ is true and that Christ came down from heaven to die for us on the sins. And that is the beauty of Christ. That's the profundity of Christ that Dostoyevsky is talking about. Christ is beautiful, Christ is true, and the result of that, Christ provides meaning and purpose for our lives. But at the same time, we also have to remember that if Christ is not true, and that is the core of Dostoyevsky's dialectic, is that if Christ is not true, then what is truth? Or not even what is truth, but what is the point of truth? And that is the more specific question. So for those who do not believe in Christ, or do not believe in the existence of God, I would like to ask you, why do you follow the truth? And really question yourself really deeply and say, well, if God is not the sole grounding of the truth, or if God does not exist, what exactly is your reason for following the truth? Because it cannot be out of pragmatism, because we can see that pragmatism does not worry about the truth. However, pragmatism worries about self-benefit. So it cannot be about being more pragmatic. You're claiming, if you say that we should follow the truth, is that, I think, at least in my opinion, if I'm wrong, please feel free to correct me on this, but if you want to follow the truth as the main goal in your life, you must find something within the truth which is intrinsically valuable, which is not based on God, and I personally, in my opinion, find it very difficult to do that. So, or at least find the philosophical reason, and it's not because I have a Christian prejudice, it's just because after thinking about it and also delving really deep in it, I really cannot find a solution, because even Nietzsche, the great atheistic, although he isn't really atheistic, the great psychologist and philosopher Nietzsche, even he himself agrees that if Christ does not exist, or if God doesn't exist, why not untruth? And you could read that in Beyond Good and Evil and throughout his works. Nietzsche is a pragmatist, and that's what Dostoyevsky is saying, is that when we leave Christ, we leave the truth as well with it, and we return to pragmatism and self-will, which ultimately leads to self-destruction. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I know it's shorter than most of my other videos. I know it's very packed with information and ideas. So if you're interested in more of this content, make sure you like and subscribe. If you want me to delve deeper into any of these concepts as well, then make sure you let me know in the comment section below. I'll make a video on that maybe next week or the week after in this series on Dostoyevsky and Nietzsche, which I think might go on for a long time, but we'll see how that goes. Like always, stay safe, have a great week, have fun with friends and family. God bless. I hope to see you in the next one. See you soon, and goodbye. Have a great one. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.